Aha, we're live. Okay. We had some minor technical issues, as is the norm here, and we should now be live. The other Kuribrohs are currently out of action. Tom is lost in Paris, and then Seb and Alec have fallen ill, so they have not been able to join us for TKB Live today. So I will be leading you all on a magical adventure as we look at what happened this week in Yu-Gi-Oh! So just while we wait for people to join the chat, if there's anything you want us to talk about today, let me know in the comments and I will check those out. And we should be back to a normal TKB live next week once everybody's kind of settled down into place. It's been a pretty interesting week for Yu-Gi-Oh! We had quite a few large events this weekend. There was a 700 player regional in the US, and then there was also the Card Market Series in Paris. So both Europe and America had large events going on, so we're getting to see a little bit more of the format here. But I think more importantly, can't even do guess the card. But yeah, so it seems like a good time to kind of take a look and see where the format is going and what we can kind of learn from the events that have been played so far this format. So, I mean, at the start of this format, we've definitely seen Spiral to be kind of the popular deck at the start of it. A lot of hyper-end Magician Souls and such. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing that dying down. At recent events, we've seen Spiral not perform to the kind of tier 0 expectation that people necessarily expected of it. And even if the deck is as powerful as it would seem, like, the deck is very powerful. The deck very much informs the format around it. It's more a case of, do people feel the deck is powerful? And that's a very different argument. So that's something to watch out for. Spiral is probably going to fall off a little bit in popularity as it hasn't gotten the results. We saw Card Market Series Paris, won by Shadol Mech Knight, which it was Shadol Invoked, which is pretty interesting. And then we saw the US 700 player regional won by Heroes. So, those are two decks that the Shadol deck particularly, I don't think anybody would have anticipated to see winning an event. And then the Heroes list. Heroes was a deck that was very hyped going into this format and really hasn't seen the kind of prominence that something like Spiral did. Spiral and Heroes were two big decks for this format, and Spiral has lived up to expectations, but Heroes is definitely struggling to kind of get there in the end. So it's interesting. We could see kind of Heroes spike up and Spiral spike down. The kind of the control point of the format for both the Hero and the Spiral decks is the fact that evenly matched is very prominent, and cards like Lightning Storm are really defining how this format shapes out. What I'm gonna bring up is we're gonna take a look at Yu-Gi-Oh! Scope. Nope, that's not what we want. Yes, this does not want to work, which is fine. There's some setting that I need to change. Yeah, I mean, looking at the format itself, it's a question of, is Spiral going to stay as powerful? Are other decks going to start seeing themselves picking up? It's kind of weird because we're seeing a lot of diversity in the format, similar to what we had prior to the list. It's just the decks have changed. So prior to the list, we saw things like Sky Striker, we saw things like True Draco. Those have all taken hits, but the format has been replaced with a lot of decks that are familiar. Just were slightly below those prior to the hits. So looking at the stats here, we can see that Salamangreat, Spiral, Altergeist, Dinosaur, Orcust, Lunalight, and Hero are all very popular. And then we also see decks like Invoked Mech Knights, which is really growing in popularity here. Raptor FX is saying that in Northern England, Heroes have won 3 regionals over the past 2 to 3 weeks, and at least 2 in top 8. Yeah, I mean, like, Heroes is definitely performing well. I just don't think it has the same amount of kind of coverage as something like Spiral does. And it's probably a case of Spiral, more players had the cards, and Magician's Souls was just a single card that got hyped up, whereas Heroes has a much higher barrier to entry because there were multiple hyped cards in the set and they got hyped slowly over time, so it means that it's less accessible. Spiral is fragile and bricky, says Kane. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so Spiral is kind of in a weird position where it's not actually that different to the deck that we saw 2 years ago. And while the end boards that it can make are very strong, like Sleeper is just a win condition by itself against a lot of decks. The format has developed quite a lot, and that means that it gets away less often with its poor hands, whereas in the past, I think the core difference here is that in the previous Spiral format, you could play Go Second Spiral and the deck could do enough, because going second, just summoning some disruption and then going into double Helix was sufficient. Whereas now in this format, I've been testing a lot of just kind of seeing how well going second works. It's a much tougher format. In the previous format, Go Second Spiral played into a lot of other Spiral, and it played into decks like Trickstar. And those were decks that you could summon a Super Agent and start playing a slightly kind of tempo-y, control-y sort of matchup. Whereas if you look at the current format, you can't just summon an agent against a guru. You can't just summon an agent against an Altergeist player. So not only is the deck more fragile, but it has to do a lot more on turn 1. Otherwise it struggles, whereas in the past it was able to get away with not really doing much on turn 1 and still being able to play true. Additionally, we just have more hand traps, and now you have to play around things like Nibiru and stuff, so it's kind of interesting to see how the deck has gone. Tom just asks when the Roses list. I will be bothering Tom to get up the list as soon as possible. He is currently in Paris with Juliana, so I am hoping they're having a lovely time. But until he gets back, we definitely won't see a list from him. His list at the weekend seemed pretty cool. He was on the feature match for round 3 of the main event at the Card Market Series. He won that round. He went on to lose due to a few misplays, which I'm sure he'll explain when he does a profile of the deck. But yeah, he really enjoyed the event. He played 2 of the qualifier events on the previous day. He lost to Johannes on the first one against Spiral, because he didn't realize that Sleeper had to pop something to summon. So apparently there was some way that he would have been able to play around it otherwise. And then on the second one he won, so he got 2 buys going into the main event. So that's pretty cool. It's an interesting system. I'm sure people will have thoughts on whether or not buys are beneficial for the game, but it definitely is nice being able to rock up to a tournament kind of after the tournament has started, right? There's something nice about not having to get up at like 9 a.m. on a tournament day. Banger Regional was yesterday. Top 7 was Spiral, Block BA, Cyber Dragons, Trains, Blind Second Orchest, Guru, and Altergeist. That's another thing. Trains seems to be doing really well. While Tom was in Paris, Alec, Seb, and Ping were all at the Brotherhood Regional. And I think Tom Barris top forward with Trains, which is pretty exciting. So that's a pretty cool deck. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like we lost a lot of decks with the list, but it seems like just more and more decks are just kind of coming out of the woodwork and being playable as a result of it. Congrats, Stephen, on topping the Banger Regional. Noobman asks, thoughts on the new Shaddoll structure deck? I'm not super impressed with Shaddolls right now, but maybe after seeing the Shaddoll Invoked list, I'll be more convinced. My thoughts was that off Shaddoll Fusion, you pretty much just want to summon Winda. Winda is pretty good, but there's also a lot of back row decks. Things like Guru don't care about Winda. So at the moment, theory in my head, I'm kind of like, Shaddoll isn't really the deck to be on. But it's possible that I'm just kind of underestimating the deck. It's definitely an interesting one, and I would be interested to see kind of how that deck develops. Obviously, I like summoning Construct, but until there's something like Fairy Tail Snow to send off Construct, it's just not the monster you're going to summon. Obviously, Trains played a Shaddoll Fusion engine, and a lot of people have been testing it in going second decks. So as an engine, it's interesting. As a core of a deck, I don't know if it kind of suits the deck at the moment. Just because you need to have a lot of activators aside from Shaddoll Fusion, because Shaddoll Fusion can be hit with Ash Blossom, which is slightly unfortunate. Let's see what else people have to say. Geist is performing very well. Yeah, so McDiddyDags asks, what's the thoughts on the 46 card hero deck that won the 700 player regional? Heroes is really interesting right now. The fact that it effectively has like a bajillion rotas is pretty enticing. And also it just, there's so much toolbox available to that deck. The fact that, Stratos can be used for spell and trap removal, and you can also play things like Acid and Absolute Zero to give kind of removal that doesn't brick your deck is pretty interesting, because I think that's kind of one of the core concerns is like the back row decks are very back row heavy at the moment, and they have a lot of live back row because they're playing cards like Judgment and Strike, and there can be things like that. So being able to have just generic removal is pretty good. Splashing Zodiacs to make the Link for Infinitrack. I think Zodiacs in general are just going to be a kind of an engine that people play more for nostalgia than due to the actual value of the engine. At YCS London this year, I played against people on the Lunalight deck who were playing the splash of Zodiac cards with kind of like triple barrage and Turboblade, and then I've also seen people playing Zodiac cards in Striker recently because it gives you access to fours and spells for going into like Utopia and stuff. But I'm not really convinced that there's much payoff to it because like the core issue is it's just inherently bricky at the moment due to the fact that you can't kind of easily gain value from Chakanine. Once Chakanine becomes easily accessible, Zodiac suddenly becomes quite good again. But without access to Chakanine, Zoo as an engine just doesn't really do much. I think the interesting deck, I think the deck that I least expected to do well from this list was probably Salamangreat. And it's just a new Spiral essentially in terms, or not Spiral, it's the new Sky Striker essentially. It's just like it's just gonna live forever. They hit stuff and the deck's just like, yeah, that's fine, I don't really care. So that's kind of interesting. And I think the more that I see of the format, the more I'm convinced that Salad is like a pretty nice in-between deck. It's it's such a broad format that there's kind of a question of, is the best deck to just play something that plays a lot of interaction and then a kind of concise engine. And Salad has a really nice balance there because not only does it always have space for hand traps, but it also has inherent interaction built into its cards, particularly like Foxy. Foxy is quite good against things like Orcus, being able to remove Babel, and it's also versatile against decks like Altergeist and stuff. So as long as you can stun the combo decks enough, and Spiral has shown itself to be quite fragile, even with hands where it opens Magician's Souls, because there's so many possible hand traps in the format, it's very hard for Spiral to kind of consistently resolve its combo. There are certain times where you open Souls and you open your Big Red or your Monster Reborn, and then the opponent just has DD Crow for you. And then there are other times where you don't, but they have something like Ash. So that's pretty interesting to see. We've been discussing a lot about hand traps in general in the team. Kind of Nibiru started off very prominent in this format, and it definitely seems to be dying down. Whereas potentially cards like Ash Blossom are becoming a lot more prevalent. So it's kind of interesting to see how the hand trap lineups is really shifting. Really shifting with the format as we kind of explore it more. And I think that's the exciting thing about this format is currently there's actually a lot of exploration going on. It again, kind of the hype was Spiral best deck, and we're seeing that as we progress along, maybe it's not the best deck, and that's giving people a lot of space to play around with stuff. I'm not crazy about how prominent Geist and Guru are at the moment because I don't think they're terribly interesting decks to play against. They're a lot of fun to play. Guru particularly is probably more fun than Geist. I think Geist has a certain level of... The interactions are interesting and cool, but you end up doing the same interactions. And there is a certain point with Geist where the deck just has won the game, but you still have to go through the motions. Just going back to questions, Lucas asks how Tom did in Paris. Tom did okay. He didn't make Top Cut. I forget what exactly happened. I know he has one or two misplays that cost him games and things that he could kind of take away. But again, he'll go more into detail on that because he'll kind of have more insight on it. Basically, I think the takeaway is he was pretty happy with the deck, even if there were one or two issues. Brian says if we get Trident, we could play it. Yeah, 100%. If Zoo gets Trident, I think Zoo becomes a real consideration for a lot of decks. I think Trident in general is very interesting. Kind of anxious about it due to the fact that we just got rid of Diagram essentially, and Destruction Activators are very interesting because there are a lot of cards that like to be popped. So I think Trident is a very strong card. Broadbolt definitely isn't happening. Yeah, like Salmon Great seems like a very baseline deck. Brian says Salad feels like a 2014, 2015 in 2020. 100%. I mean, here's the thing. Salmon Great does not seem exciting to me, but I do concede that I think it is a good deck right now. And that's the thing, is that like it's just such a kind of baseline consistent deck. It doesn't do anything flashy, it doesn't do anything super exciting. It's like, oh, I searched my counter trap and set it. But it just has so much recursion that it means any of the hands where the other decks in the format stumble, Salmon Great has a really good advantage in those. And because it gets to play so many hand traps, it reminds me a bit of old Zodiac, where you had a lot of space to play interaction. So it meant even though there were decks with higher ceilings than Salmon Great, or higher ceilings than Zodiac at the time, not sure if anything really had a higher ceiling than Zodiac, but, even if something has a higher ceiling than you, being able to just hit them during their combo, and this is really evident with Spiral, where 2 pieces of interaction from Salad can shut down the Spiral player, and then Salmon Great can build a board that is just enough to stop Spiral from kind of getting back into the game. So that's kind of interesting to see. Etchelade says, unless you're testing against Dan, then every Spiral hand means you're dead. Yeah, sure. I've been doing some weird Spiral stuff. I think I need to test the deck more. I'm not sure if it's the deck that I want to be playing. We have a regional coming up this weekend in Ireland, in Galway, which I'll be traveling to. Still need to choose a deck for it. Spiral is a consideration, but there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's kind of a case of figuring out. I think the format has sufficient answers to combo decks that you do need to consider whether or not people are going to be bringing answers for combo decks to an event. Yeah, so Kane asks, are there any lesser mentioned deck trends you're noticing? He's seeing a lot of Mystic Minds and Evenleys. Ogre and Troll are making comebacks. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. The format has shifted dramatically. Again, we entered the format thinking it was a Nibiru format, and additionally, Spiral is inherently weak to evenly matched, and this is something that we know from the previous Spiral format. And again, you do have access to Trigate Wizard sometimes, but yeah, I mean, I think evenly is probably staple in the format, because it forces judgment against the trap card decks, and otherwise it just blows them out. Like, if you resolve evenly against Guru, they're not coming back into that game. And Guru has inherent protection again, because with any of their good hands, they're ending with a face-up Guru and a Fiendess in hand. But, and then, again, with Spiral, with any of their good hands, they're ending with the Trigate with the Negate. But there are ways to bait that, and just inherently things are a lot weaker to evenly. Whereas in the previous format, evenly really wasn't the card to be on. So it's kind of interesting to see evenly back into the format. I'm not sure how I feel about it necessarily. I think it's a much fairer card than it was when originally printed, but it's still a very blowouty card. Mystic Mine is interesting. Again, it reduces the value of the Wombo combo decks, but it's kept in check by the control decks. So I think mine is possibly overhyped right now, whereas I think evenly is definitely kind of appreciated as much as it should be, or possibly underrated, because I think you need to be justifying why you're not playing evenly if you're not playing evenly in this format, because it's a really powerful card. Ogre is picking up steam. I don't like Ogre in formats with Salamangreat necessarily, because it matches weirdly into that. But pretty much every other matchup, I think Ogre is quite good. You can Ogre the Guru and force the Fiendess activation. You can Ogre the Hidden City and just completely kill Guru's play. You can Ogre stuff against Spiral. So yeah, Ogre is feeling really nice right now. Droll is interesting. Again, like, at least Ogre has play against the Extravagance decks, whereas Droll is a lot worse against him. So Droll is like super hyped because of Spiral, but I think we're gonna see Droll kind of die off a bit because it doesn't do very well in the matchups where people are on control. What do I think about the fact that we have 3 judgments, 3 warnings, and 1 reboot, and evenly and Lightning Storm, are evenly and Lightning Storm lower value with these cards? No, 100% not. Having all of the counter traps in the format makes evenly and Lightning Storm more valuable, because you need to have power cards that are so impactful that you can either A, burn resources and then power card your opponent, or in the cases of these power cards, you play them first. They force the interaction, and that's why they're so strong. Because the issue is, if you have cards that only make people consider using the interaction, you know, like, if my opponent has a judgment, I need to have a way to get rid of it. Now, I can have something like a Mystical Space Typhoon, but why play Mystical Space Typhoon when I can play triple Feather Duster and then triple Evenly, which effectively works as Feather Duster here? Then not only do you have answers to the stuff and you force the activation of the counter traps, but if you open 2 of them, then sometimes you pull the counter trap and then you hit them. So I don't think those cards lower in value. I think those cards are high value because decks have cards like Judgment. Ogre's been coming back since last format. Yeah, Broad Bowl, I would agree with that. I think Ogre has always kind of... Ogre comes in and out a lot, because when Ogre starts seeing more play, people start building around it, and then it dies off. And then people start getting greedy again, and then Ogre sees more play. So it's kind of funny like that. Brian likes Lunalight more than Spirals. Lunalight has the advantage that it is a deck with lots of level 4s. And that's kind of the issue with Spiral, right? Is you're playing a lot of bricks. So even if you have the highest ceiling, bricks aren't great to be playing. So I would definitely consider Lunalight if I'm considering playing a combo deck, because I would much rather be on a level 4 deck that has more consistency. And again, this kind of ties back into why is Salamangreat so good, because there's so many normal summons. You know, you don't want to be losing 2 hands where the opponent has a hand trap, as well as hands where you just don't draw anything playable. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth looking at. Do I think that Salamangreat is a good decision for YCS VIP next weekend? Depends a lot on your local format. It depends on what you're expecting, and it depends if you're experienced with Salamangreat. If you're not experienced with Salamangreat, I think there are a lot of cases where you will miss lines. You know, there's a lot of subtlety in the interactions of Salamangreat, knowing which hands land you with your counter trap and which hands land you into Dweller and stuff. It's very important to be aware of those. So I would think a lot about it. I think Salamangreat is well positioned at the moment, and especially if you're expecting a mix of things like Spiral as well as the trap card decks, it can be quite good. I think the hand trap lineup is very important. If you're not expecting any Spiral, then, you know, you can possibly be looking at Salamangreat with things like MSTs mained. There's a lot of space with Salamangreat, and that's something that I like about it, is that I think it has more space for non-engine cards. Whereas there's a lot of very heavy engine decks in the format. We're saying that Salad doesn't have much space for hand trap. Max 11. 11 hand traps is a lot in this format, though. Like, is there a deck that fits hand traps better? If there is, feel free to point it out, because I would be interested. But I think 11 hand traps is plenty of interaction in this format. Simon asks, what's stronger, Salmon, Greater Orcust? What is kind of higher ceiling, or what will perform better? In terms of higher ceiling, obviously Orcust. I'm not crazy about Orcust at the moment. I think there is too much interaction that really hurts that deck. Sure, Droll isn't too much of a problem for it, and Droll is very popular, but anybody who's still on Nibiru's, you're like, oh... anybody who has Droll or Crows, and like Spiral is searching Crow as part of its combo, so that's kind of yikes. It means that people can just naturally open Crow, so I think again Salad has kind of a safer just has a safer baseline, where when we're in a format with a lot of hand trap interaction, you know, just being able to end on a Sunlight Wolf, add back Gazelle, so you have floating, you have some interaction, you can just grind a little bit, is more appealing to me. Once Orcust gets the Mekk-Knight Orcust card, deck will be crazy again. Dweller is pretty good, and it's something to be kind of mindful of. But, you know, it's something to keep an eye out for. If you're really worried about Dweller and Salad, you can side things like Chalices, I guess. You know, that's the classic Dweller out. Would I consider Invoked Shaddoll for Galway? I need to see the Invoked Shaddoll list first. I don't know if it's been released yet. I think it was due to come out today or tomorrow. I'll just check. So I would be displaying stuff on my screen here, but I've literally just set up this new computer. So on the plus side, we're going to have nicer content because I can actually start editing videos and not set the house on fire. But on the downside, it does mean that currently stream is not behaving itself as much as I would like. But yeah, Invoked Shaddoll, interesting. Like, Invoked is really hot right now in terms of just... Invoked Mekk-Knight is very popular. Invoked Shaddoll is going to make Shaddoll very popular. So, you know, Alistair the Invoker is a very popular guy. And Mechaba is a pretty fun card. What's my thoughts on Lady Debug and Salad? I've seen people arguing between Debug and Bufferlow at the moment. I think I'm more in Debug camp at the moment, but I have heard a lot of arguments for the fact that Debug has like bad matchup into Droll, because then you can't search the field spell, but it's kind of like, if they want to trade their Droll for my field spell, do I care too much? So yeah, I'm kind of, I would need to test it more, but I think I'm probably more on Debug, especially as it's a level 4. So if you have any way to extend, if you have like Debug plus Cynet mining, then you're able to do a lot of cool stuff where you're hopefully ending on a Dweller, because Dweller is really nice right now. Gamma is sick in this format. Gamma is really good right now, except when your opponent doesn't do anything. I've been testing Gamma. I've seen a lot of people been testing Gamma. Obviously, Spiral wants to kind of bait interaction with Gamma, and then, you know, any game you resolve Gamma when it's your turn, you're in such a good position, just with any deck. What else can Luna combo it? So the Luna decks that we've been seeing, we're seeing Luna Spiral, we're seeing Luna Time Thief. Both of those are pretty interesting. I probably would be on the Luna Time Thief deck if I was on either of them, but it's kind of personal preference. But Time Thieves are a lot of fun. Lunalight is a lot of fun as well. Definitely like one of the more budget decks of the format as well, which is pretty cool. That's something to be concerned about, is that while we have a very diverse format again, the cost of the format has suddenly skyrocketed because everybody was like, huh, I guess I need extravagance or Appaloosa. So that's kind of weird because we have had such a long period where the formats weren't very expensive. I mean, again, Salmon Great isn't too expensive, but you have things like Signet Minings, which are on the more expensive side, and I'd kind of want to be playing Imperms in the deck, I think. I think Imperm just has really nice coverage, lets you deal with there can be only one, and a few other kind of problem cards. Just gives you a lot of space. Yes, people are pointing out 18 hand trap Goki is pretty crazy. Yeah, I mean, the Goki deck was really interesting, and again, that kind of just feeds into the fact that, like, the format's crazy. Like, you can play so much. That was from the PPG event last weekend. Yeah, I mean, again, I think hand traps is a really good place to be at the moment, but as Spiral becomes less popular, which I think it will tend towards being less popular, again, you know, it's a difficult enough deck to have anyway because the barrier to entry is very high, and then we've seen the format be very harsh on the deck. So, you know, a lot of people were like, Spiral tier 0, and that's just not the case. So if Spiral's not tier 0, well, then people are probably going to play other stuff, because it's not the most exciting deck to play. A man can only resolve Big Red so many times before he just accepts that he actually wants to play a proper game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah, Invoked is okay. If your opponent knows you're playing Invoked, they do play around it, but the Invoked deck does get to play so many kind of free spells and traps that it gets to set, so it's not like the opponent can ever avoid you being able to Mech Knight stuff, and also just the power cards are really strong. But, you know, it's kind of one to be aware of rather than necessarily having to directly engage with. I think the thing with mech that I'm most interested by is the fact that super polymerization is so much worse this format. I think going into like YCS London last year, Super Poly was in a really good place, and I think right now Super Poly just isn't worth the slot. Unless you are getting payoff for discarding the card. Like, even decks like Salmon Great aren't really playing it, possibly siding it. But, you know, we've come quite a way since Super Poly was, like, super busted. So that's kind of nice in terms of I don't like Super Poly's design too much. You could have a Super Poly that can't respond to with traps and spells, or you could have a Super Poly that you can't respond to with monster effects, but the full spell speed 4 is just excessive. Especially when you have kaijus and you have sphere modes, that's a card that's very hyped. If you think the combo decks are about, and they're about in force, kaiju sphere modes are probably the cards to be on. Yeah, I mean, Invoked, just going to what Broadbull is after saying here in the chat. Yeah, Invoked is a really interesting deck. I think the Invoked engine as an engine is a really cool one. And like being said there, the Mech Knights are probably the less interesting part of that engine. You know, Mech Knights are not going to do as much in the new Master Rule as Invoked as an engine is going to do. At the same time, Mech Knight still has some interesting stuff. Summoning like Mech Knights of different levels and overlaying them into weird stuff is pretty cool. But they're a lot more linear than what Invoked is. Invoked lets you kind of challenge your deck building a lot more, I think. Yeah, and exactly this kind of leads us back in the argument of just like, can you play a deck that only wants to go second in this format? And it doesn't seem like you can. I guess maybe if you're maining triple evenly and triple lightning storm, then you have a relatively high probability of seeing some form of mass removal. But the issue is mass removal isn't very effective against those decks, so you need to be playing 6 live cards, and you need to hope that your 6 live cards beat their 7 or 8 cards that they will have. So, Invoked won Card Market Series Paris and came 5th at Brotherhood. Also, Shadal will only make it more consistent. Yeah, I mean, the Shadal structure deck could do a lot for that. Is Invoked the best deck right now? I'm not sure. I mean, the nice thing with Invoked is you can, like, main evenly in it, and then if you go second, you have evenly to negate their evenly with your Mechaba. Again, Mechaba is just a really good card. Purgatrio is just super free damage, so I like Alistair right now. Definitely Alistair is seeing a lot of popularity, like, just every trade group I'm in, I just see people being like, looking for Alistair, looking for Meltdown. Can Lightning Storm and Phantasme coexist in a going second deck like Mech Invoked or Thomas's BA? I believe that Lightning Storm... Well, here's the thing. Phantasme can coexist with pretty much any card that doesn't want you to have cards on the field, because as long as you don't have a full playset of them, Phantasme just puts them back. So, you know, you need to be stuck with 2 copies of that card before Phantasme hasn't gone even on advantage. So I think Phantasme plus Storm is totally fine. They're both fantastic cards. I think Phantasme is quite good at the moment. I've not actually looked at its price. I assume that it will bounce back very quickly because I know it dropped. It dropped because of certain potential leaks. Let's check. Yeah, so Phantasmes are like €40 at the moment, which is crazy because that card's really good. Like, even in the new Master Rule, that card's really good. In fact, you can go first sometimes, just sit on VFD. VFD is pretty good. Yeah, Brian is saying that he plays Phantasme, Imperm, and Lightning Storm in Solomon Great. And that's the thing, it's like, Phantasme is fine because you can look at your hand, and if you need to summon the Phantasme, then you know to summon the Phantasme, and if you don't need to summon the Phantasme, you can just keep the power card. That's actually one of the issues that Tom encountered. He like trolled a guy when he had Phantasme in hand, and so he denied himself the ability to resolve Phantasme. So that was something that cost him a game because he was stuck with like 2 Phantasmes. So that's something to watch out for. Figure out when Phantasme is better than Troll. Kenji asks, he has 3 golden castles. Should he try and sell or try to Grand Magi away? I mean, Golden Castle is a really funny card, but it's kind of a case of I mean, they're like 20s at the moment, so, you know, do you need specific cards? If there are good cards that enable a deck that you would like to play, that are better than Castle, then it's probably worth getting rid of the Castles. If you're just looking to have fun and play, like, a hilarious deck, then by all means, Castle Maju is hilarious. Like, it's a fun deck. But if you're just trying to top regionals and stuff, I don't think a Castle deck is necessarily where I would want to be. What was the Brotherhood top 8 like? I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if lists have been released from that event yet. I know Train's top 8'd, and that is about all that I paid attention to. Let's see if there's any information that we can find. How do I feel about Cyber Dragon at the regional level? Cyber Dragon doesn't seem to have been performing that impressively as of late. I think there are formats where Cyber Dragon is really good. and it's particularly good in formats where power is trapped in the extra monster zone. But we're not in a format where power is trapped in the extra monster zone, so the issue is that like Mega Fleet is a lot worse. So yeah, I'm not crazy about it at the moment. But I think it has potential always to be a sleeper deck in the format, and you can probably play it and do fine. But, you know, it's kind of like, how do you answer sleeper with Cyber Dragon? If you have a really good answer to sleeper, then by all means. But otherwise, I would kind of, you still have to respect sleeper. Because even hands where Spiral gets interrupted, they'll still end with sleeper. Do I think that if Spiral falls off a bit, people will start playing fewer answers? Yeah, so I would expect the format to kind of fluctuate a bit around Spiral, where we'll see kind of Spiral popular, people playing stuff to answer it. Then because the deck is fragile, it'll fall off a little bit. People will kind of start focusing on the back row decks, and then it will bounce back to Spiral, because I don't think in main deck and side deck you can fully cover the extreme contrast of the top decks in the format. Yeah, so Phantasma has dropped because people think it's worse, but honestly, like, it's just such a good card. It's like absolutely any deck wants to play Phantasma because it's a free body that also fixes your hand. Like, it's just really strong. And then it has presence on the board as well. Like, I don't know. I think the card is very good. Droll is not good in every deck. Overhyped. Droll is 100% overhyped at the moment. Like, there are plenty of answers that aren't Troll that are possibly better. It's like, is Troll better than just gamming somebody? Well, on the plus side, you don't have to play Driver, and I've been drawing a lot of Driver recently, so maybe that's the pro play. Leon Dow Ranger says that Brotherhood Regional was 2 Spiral, 2 Luna, 1 Hero, 1 Train. Not sure what the other 2 decks were, Luna Light 1. Yeah, so, I mean, again, this is interesting in terms of, I mean, unless the other 2 decks were like Geist or something, then it might be that Geist didn't actually perform very well at that event, which would be interesting to see, because I think there's a few good Geist players in the UK. Golden Castle with Lava Golem main is a terrible idea. Nice. That is good advice for everyone playing. Do you think it's a good time to sell a hero deck? I don't know. Heroes are really hard to tell because the cards don't, like, their value isn't purely tied to the competitive format. So, you know, if it's purely from kind of a financial perspective, you know, I think heroes will hold value pretty close or might even go up regardless of whether or not they're seeing play. Like, they seem like they're doing a lot this format. They seem like, if you know how to play the deck, especially because it hasn't seen the popularity of something like Spiral, people don't know where to interact with it a lot of the time. So it's possibly the better kind of Wombo-y deck in the format. I don't think even the new ones will stop going up. I think they will hold value very well unless they get reprinted in some way, and even then the original printings are so limited that they will most likely hold value. Nightmare says, I feel like Mali is going to get hit hard once we get the Nemesis stuff, which is going to hurt heroes a lot. I don't know why Mali is a tree. Like, that is one of the most confusing changes I've ever seen on a list. That tilts me to no end that Malicious has bounced back and forth so much, because he's just such a silly card. And again, Malicious is one of those cards where it's like, oh, you're playing Phantasme, I'm just so much better now. Because now you have more extenders, and your extenders make sure you don't have all of your malicious in your hand. It's kind of silly. The Nemesis stuff is interesting. I'm glad Colossus is gone. Because that would be really silly with the Nemesis stuff. Yeah, I mean, Driver is a great companion, guys, but I'm not sure he's the card that I want to be playing right now. Not in my opening hand, anyway. What are fun deck ideas to look forward to in the new Master Rule? There's a lot of them. So, I mean, obviously Shaddoll is one that I want to take a look at. It's kind of hard to tell. Definitely, like, there's going to be a lot of crazy synchro stuff to try out. It's kind of sad to say that I'm just not very good when it comes to doing wombo-y combo-y stuffs. So I feel like I just have such limited imagination. Because, like, the first thing when somebody says it, I'm just like, Noble Knights? And then I turn around to myself and I'm like, wait a second. Noble Knights doesn't need the new Master Rule because you're only summoning 4 to 5 monsters turn 1 anyway. So you're never going beyond the arrows that Isolde provides to you anyway. Orcus becomes interesting because you can just summon Dingirsu wherever you want, which is kind of funny, but there's a lot of stuff. Ooh, I wanna take a look at Blue Eyes as well. And DDD. DDD is a deck that I played for a whole week and a half, and then I was like, oh wait, they just made this deck release so late that it will never be relevant ever again, which is kind of sad. So it's definitely something to take a look at. And the Pirates is interesting. The Plunder Patrol will definitely be something to take a look at once we go into the new format. There's just a lot of stuff to be taking a look at. Like, April is a very exciting time. Do I want to play Shaddoll for the regional this weekend? That's the real question. So, what was meant to happen was I was meant to be testing with the guys today with the Irish Kuribrohs. But then the UK guys let me know that they weren't available to stream. So, we're not testing when we should be testing. But it's hard to tell. There's like a lot of stuff I want to try out. I considered looking at Striker, but I'm not sure if it's really the deck that I want to be on. It's just, there's something very enticing about triple Kagari, but at the same time, I probably want Lightning Storms, and I don't think I'm buying Lightning Storms anytime soon, because I went and bought a PC. So, like I said, we now have a new computer, so we're gonna actually have proper edited content, maybe, hopefully, possibly. So if there is content you want to see in an edited format, let us know, and I will see what I can do. Oh, and the laptop is about to seppuku itself, so I should probably plug that in. Just give me 1 second, guys. Okay, we're back. Yeah, DDD was a lot of fun for a week, and then Zoo came out, and it was like, oh, I guess DDD's not so good now. It was real pity, because DDD is such a fun deck to learn how to play. You have so many different combos. We were on a deck that was like summoning Stardust Charge Warrior, draw a card, summon Formula Synchron, draw a card, make Beatrice, send Slime, summon, and on like Siegfried and hope Harbinger Dragon and be like, it's your turn. And yeah, then it was just like normal summon Red Pierre, and it's like summon Norden. It's like draw a million cards. They just have like their entire deck in their hand, and you're just like, 2 negates isn't beating this, I guess. Yeah, Crusadia's just fallen off. It's really weird. It's interesting to me that the anime archetypes have been doing really well this season. You know, we've seen Solomon Great just existing forever. You know, is Solomon Great ever going to leave the game? Don't think so. Like, it's pretty good. And then, you know, Altergeist has kind of gone in and out. We saw Trickstar be crazy. We saw Firewall Dragon. Don't talk about Firewall Dragon. But, you know, so that's really interesting to see how impactful the actual show archetypes have been. And then we just see the kind of really interesting World Legacy stuff. Just so much of it just wasn't relevant, you know. World Chalice was a deck for a while, but I don't think it ever was the best deck, even if it had very high YCS tops, because it basically was just summon Saryu to draw a lot of cards, and end on Gameciel, and Gameciel wins the game, which is pretty funny. Gameciel, good card. I do like Gameciel a lot. It's hilarious when an opponent gives you a Gameciel and forgets that you know what Gameciel does. But yeah, I mean, Crusadia and World Chalice just haven't really done much. Crusadia and Needle Fiber FTKs. I mean, yeah, I mean, you can play it. The most hilarious FTK at the moment, I think, is the Gallus one that was like rediscovered essentially, because it's one that's existed forever, but for some reason recently people have just been talking about it a lot, which amuses me. Yeah, Geist, Trickstar, Goki, and Salad. All of those are anime decks. All of them have been tier 1 decks at some point in this format, which when we compare it to the previous season, so with Arc 5, we had Pendulum, we had, like, I guess Pepe and Magicians. Yeah, they're both different decks, technically. But, you know, so much of Arc 5 was dominated by, like, Shadal and Klee and all of the dual terminal archetypes. So it's kind of interesting to see a switch across. Yeah, it's kind of weird. What is the opinion on Necros in the format? I think Necros is good in terms of, I don't think a lot of people will play around it, but I think something that a lot of decks will suffer from in this format is getting caught up in the crossfire. And I think Necros is probably a deck that gets crossfired a bit, especially because Necros does not like Droll and Lockbird. And you're playing a going second deck, so your opponent is statistically more likely to see their main deck Drolls. And when they resolve Droll, you're like, ooh, that sucks. So Necros, interesting, fun. You can definitely win games with it, but I'm not super hot on Necros in a format where Droll is being main decked. Yeah, just going back to the Arc V decks, yeah, all of the decks I mentioned with the kind of Pendulum, Performapal, Performage, Magician, they are all used by the same character, but they are kind of distinctly different decks. So you could possibly count them as unique decks, or you could not. Duelist Alliance ran Arc V, 100%. Duelist Alliance was such a good set. And I kind of miss that. This is something that I've kind of been looking at from a design perspective, and I kind of question what made the shift. Because if you look at the Arc V sets, we had the transition where they would introduce an archetype. So if we look at Duelist Alliance, we got Winda, we got Construct, we got Beast, Falco, Dragon, Fusion. And I think we also got Squamata and maybe one or two others. And then with Satellar Knights, we got Altair, Deneb, Vega, Anuk, Telenova Alpha, and Deltaros. And then, Burning Abyss, we got Dante, Seer, Graph, Skarm, and Traveler and Burning Abyss. And, it's interesting to see how each set, multiple archetypes, got more support. Whereas if you look at the more recent design, we see sets where they're just like, here's all of the archetype support. And so it means that you get a full deck in a set, but it means you're then less inclined to buy more of the next set because, there aren't any new cards for your deck necessarily in the set. And I think that's an interesting change because it's quite a drastic one. It's kind of interesting. Like the TCG exclusives, at least, have been following on where we get some war cards every time. But even those with like dangers, either A, the dangers were a very limited set of cards where we only got them over 2 or 3 sets, or B, they realized dangers are real broke and we shouldn't print any more of them. Funny thing is, Ritual Beasts have been seeing play locally, which is the deck which is kind of cute. So if you're looking for a fun deck, that's been doing okay around Dublin area. Ritual Good Stuff Necros with Ben 10 Vanity Ruler going first. But yeah, I mean, just any Necros deck is going to die to Droll. Just like inherently the deck is designed so it needs to be searching stuff. Even the incantations all have effects that are interacting with searching stuff. So yeah. Oh yeah, that's true. Duelist Alliance Shadol, you gotta play Shadow Games, which was very cool. And Core, which was also a good card, but Shadow Games was a lot of fun. Was I an ABC, Metalfoe, or Paleo player back in the time? I played both Metalfoe and Paleo. I preferred Metalfoe, I think. So basically, I played Paleo up until we got Mithril. Because I think base Metalfoes was super boring. It was like summon Zulkin deck, which just wasn't interesting. Whereas once Metalfoe became a more pure deck, it was really cool. You were playing Takatomborg to summon your Totem Bird. You were playing the Monolith Scout Engine to summon Infinity and stuff. That was really cool. I liked that deck a lot and played it a lot. Paleo, I have a soft spot for frogs. It's a really cool deck. And then ABC at the time was just very... Oh, helmet on. We're just gonna summon A. Equip B from deck. Or better, summon Gadget. Summon A. Summon B from deck. I played ABC for LLDS that year. And I deeply, deeply regretted it. Because I did not have fun. But I don't think that's necessarily an issue with ABC. Which is really weird. Because I like Union as a mechanic, and I like Fusions as a mechanic, so I should like ABC. I think just ABC, where it was literally level 4 spam, wasn't very interesting. Around that same time, Tom had some really crazy lists, where he was playing like Alistair ABC, which I'll see if we can get him to kind of demonstrate those decks. They basically all relied on Ancient Fairy Dragon, but those were decks where it was really cool when you resolved ABC. Yeah. Of course, he was playing ABC long after ABC format, because ABC format he was playing Burning Abyss, which was clearly the best deck. So, Dark Lords were neat. Dark Lords are always neat. Are they good? I don't know. Have I ever read them? Not really. There's a big issue with any deck where to play it, you have to kind of agree to just play infinite bricks. That's always worrisome. So Yeah, Megalithes with rituals, kind of interesting. The new set is just kind of confusing. Like, I don't know what I'm meant to be kind of looking for in Ignition Assault, aside from Lightning Storms, which is really good. Lightning Storm, it's a very good card. But yeah. Gofu was nice. Gofu was nice in Metal Foe, but I don't think it was very interesting in Metal Foe, right? Like, he went summon Gofu, pop token, pop other token, summon Thingamabob, activate Metal Foe's Fusion, make your level 5, make Sulkin, set another Ting from deck. You know, it's cute, but like, was it interesting, Yu-Gi-Oh? Was it as fun as playing like Paleo, where every single card in your deck was interactive? Like, that was the really cool thing with Paleo. You know, you were playing like triple strike maybe, but everything else could be changed to stuff, and that's the sort of Yu-Gi-Oh that I want to be playing. So that's something to kind of consider, is, you know, what Yu-Gi-Oh do you want to be playing at a time? And I generally want to be playing the Yu-Gi-Oh where I get to activate cards and my opponent gets to activate cards, and I win because the cards I activate better than my opponent. But that very rarely happens, and it definitely doesn't happen with Spiral. It's an interesting deck. Dark Lords were only ever good in that one format. Were Dark Lords good? Like, I never played against a Dark Lord deck and was like, oh no, I'm gonna lose. But also, I think Dark Lords is a weird one because it was like, it's the weird thing with the deck builder sets, is that unless it's something like Necros, where it's just so good you have to play it, particularly in smaller markets like Ireland, you just don't see the deck very much because not enough product is opened here for people to build the deck. So there was like one guy at locals, Daryl, who had the deck, but he also hadn't been playing for very long in the kind of competitive scene. So, you know, you don't get a proper feel for it. Oh yeah. Cross Sheep is also a good card in Ignition Assault, but it isn't a card that you really need more than one of. When are we doing a Burning Abyss Block Dragon list? Well, I'm probably not doing a Burning Abyss Block Dragon list personally because I've not spent much time with it. Tom seems pretty adamant that he is following the non-Block Dragon trend. He's liking playing his Gizmex and stuff. But, you know, I can talk to him, and I will see if there's any chance that he'll do a little talk about Block BA, see if he has any insights. He has loads of Block Dragons. Like, he has tierried the deck, so I'm not sure what exactly he doesn't like about it. Again, could just be a case that he just likes kind of blazing his own path, which he does. And that's part of the fun of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just like, even if there is something that is probably better, you know, nobody's forcing you to play it. And sometimes just by playing the different deck, you catch people off guard. Is Gizmek Kaku good? That's the Antler guy, right? I mean, I think Thousand Eyes Restricted is a lot better at the moment. And yeah, once we get into Master Rule 5, he becomes a lot worse. Yeah, Time Thief support is also good in the new set, but, you know, I mean, again, it's just a case of, like, there's not a deck that you specifically want. Raphael, I will try my best. I will message Tom once he gets back from Paris and be like, Tom, the people need your Block Dragon insight. Caleb played against Alec at the Brotherhood Regional. I hope you had a good game there. What are my thoughts on the Mech Knight deck? I think Alec was on the Mech Knight deck for that event. I don't like the idea of being on a strictly go second list. I think the Mech Knight deck is probably fantastic if everybody is on the best deck in the room. But I don't think enough people are on the best deck in the room. And this has been a recurring thing for the past 2 years of the game, is just not a large enough percentage of the format have been the best deck. The closest we've gotten to it is presence of Salmon Great at European events. But, we haven't seen a format where it's 50% Necros or something. And when you don't see that, I think the Mech Knight deck struggles because, I think... I know we've definitely been talking about the idea of maining, Sphere Mode. And yeah, Sphere Mode is crazy good if every round you play against Spiral. But... if somebody's playing Geist, then suddenly you're just why do I have this chicken in my hand? It just doesn't do anything. So I think I've carried it, and in my head I've been I kind of want to play Mech Knights, and then every time I think about it a bit more, I'm I just can't justify it. So I don't know, it's definitely still a good deck, and I think Mech Invoked is kind of True Draco, where it's just it's just kind of cruising, chilling. It can always win an event, but yeah, I don't know. I think it needs a little more oomph before it will be in the right place, and I think you can make so many mistakes with the deck because the deck building is so important, where if you have the wrong tech cards and so much of the deck is tech cards, then it costs you a lot, because you have to be post-sided from game 1 onwards, whereas your opponent only has to side for game 2 and 3. So, if your side deck cards are garbage, like having Sphere Modes against an opponent who is playing Mine or something, then, it's a struggle. But yeah, I think we're getting near wrapping up sort of time, because I think I've exhausted most of my talking points here. But if people have any questions or anything they'd like me to discuss before we kind of wrap it down, just let me know. Playing against Geist is weird with Mech Invoked, but game 2 it's okay. You see, that's the problem, is do I want to lose game 1 to a deck like Geist? I mean, obviously I don't want to lose game 1 to any deck, but it's how much of the field am I willing to have a high possibility of losing game 1 to? And let me just grab some graphics here. Card market. Let's quickly grab a meta guide. So one of the really nice things that Card Market does is they have fantastic little graphics from their events, which do not want to load on my phone here. Okay. So we are actually going to make use of the fact that I have infinite space over here and actually put an image on the screen. It's exciting times, guys. Okay, so we have our advanced metagame for Card Market Series Paris. Okay, so let's take a look at this. We have Salmon Great, we have Mech Knight, we have Lunalight, we have Spiral, we have Altergeist, we have Orcust, we have Hero, we have Dino, we have a bajillion other decks. So first off, that's a really diverse format. Losing any game against Geist hurts my pride. Geist is just so frustrating to lose against, because you're always losing to them just being Silk, bounce. Silk, bounce. And you're just what am I meant to do? You just can't interact with it. Once their engine gets going, you're just they have Silk and they have Conquery, and I just never get to resolve a card. And when their engine doesn't get going, you're just you're dead. It's just such a high variance between what the deck does when it's going and when it isn't. But yeah, so let's look at this chart. How many of these does Evenly Matched hit? Is Evenly good against Salmon great? Not really. That's one of the reasons why Salad was... or why Evenly wasn't good last format. So 10% of the field, Evenly Matched isn't great against. Mech Knight. 10% of the field is Mech Knight, which means 10% of games. So one round of the tournament, we're going to play against Salad. And Salad is probably fine for Mech Knight because they're going to be setting cards. But if we're playing things like Sphere Mode and we're playing things like Evenly Matched, then perhaps those aren't going to be doing much. But also they give us access to Purgatrio. And Purgatrio is really good at killing people. So Salad is probably an okay matchup, but it's not a matchup where all of our bullets hit. Mech Knight, we both look at each other and we're like, do you have access to Makaba? And I'm like, your turn. And you're like, no, your turn, until somebody dies. So yeah, it's not the most exciting mirror match, I guess. Lunalight we get to resolve a lot of stuff against. I believe Lunalight has access to the Time Thief counter trap card. People can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Spiral, yeah, I mean Spiral is what we're hunting here, so we're happy to play the 8% Spiral, but then we have the 7% Altergeist, which are just going to judgment all of our stuff. And I assume Altergeist isn't a great matchup. Like, Mech Knight decks shouldn't have good matchups into the back row decks. Otherwise, the back row decks aren't very good in the format. Orcus is so small, and Hero is so small, and Dino is so small that we don't really need to consider them. I guess Dino and Hero have potential of wanting to be going second, in which case they also hurt you because you don't want to be playing game 1 going first. So, you know, there's like 30% of that field there that we really don't really want to play against. So I'm not sure. I think the deck is still good. It's just like, I guess there's a level of overthinking where I'm just like, oh no, well, what if I've placed all of the bad matchups? But if you play bad matchups, you're gonna play bad matchups eventually. You know, there is a level of luck in terms of what decks you play against in a tournament. Mech Invoked could be the second most represented deck in Utrecht. It's like really hard to tell what the most represented deck is going to be in formats like this, because what is this? You know, like how do you determine what the most represented deck is going to be? Like, in terms of what the hype is, it should be Spiral, right? But based on Europe, it's most likely gonna be Solomon Great. Here's another fun graphic that we have. This is top 10 side deck cards. So on average, any given side deck would have 1.5 twisters in it, which I think means 50% of side decks had 3 twisters, and then 50% didn't have any twisters. But so we're seeing twisters being popular, we're seeing evenly matched popular, Troll and Lockbird, Dark Ruler No More, Nibiru, Red Reboot, 0.9. So I'm pretty sure this means that basically everybody was playing the 1 reboot. Mind Control, less popular, Sanctum, less popular, Lancia, less popular, Inspector Border, somebody was playing it apparently. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what I would expect, I guess. Like, are there really other side deck cards in this format outside of these? And there's something very important to note about all of these. So if we take Mind Control out of the equation, everything else is a mass impact card. You know, we're not seeing Mystical Space Typhoon here. I guess we're seeing Twin Twister, but there's a big difference between Twin Twister and Mystical Space Typhoon. Not only does Twin Twister interact with more cards for a single usage, but it also enables Graveyard. So, you know, things like Salomon Great can play Twin Twister as effectively a free card. Also, I think I'm fading into the nether realm, but that's a different point. Then we have our evenly matched. Again, evenly matched is crazy. I'm surprised that this is so high because I think more people would be maining it. So it'd be interesting to see how many evenly matched were mained alongside sided. Droll and Lockbird, again, this is really high. It's probably higher due to the fact that people are maining it. Dark Ruler no more. I don't think anybody's maining this card. Is the card as good as it's hyped up to be? Like, you need to be able to break boards. So that's kind of like, well, you know, can you break the board after you Dark Ruler? If you can't, should you be playing the Dark Ruler in the first place? I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about Dark Ruler. Nibiru, again, we've been discussing, is Nibiru really the card to be playing this format? And it's kind of weird because as the format decides that it's not the card to play, it probably becomes more the format to play Nibiru in. And here's the real question. Where's Denko Seka? Denko Seka is like super dead because you normal summon him and they're just like Judgment. Which is crazy. So like we have Reboot, but we only have one Reboot. And then, you know, you need to be able to reboot and actually clear the back row because otherwise you're just giving your opponent another Solemn Judgment. Reboot becomes a lot worse when your opponent is always getting Judgment off it. Because then you have to really kill them. Mind Control, again, not a mass removal card, but when you're taking something with high link rating, you can kind of treat it as mass removal because you're removing multiple resources. Sanctum, Lancia. Lancia is kind of a weird one. Sanctum I get because Sight is presumably seeing a lot of play. Do I think there will be a Dark Scorpion retrain? Dark Scorpion retrain would be really interesting. I could definitely see that happen. I'd be interested to see what the Dark Scorpions do. But yeah, I mean, Dark Scorpion would be very interesting. Spiral is like how Thunder used to be, too expensive to be the most represented deck. 100%. It's too expensive and it's not good enough. If it were better, it would see more representation, but I don't think it's like that much of the best deck to be the best deck, if that makes sense. Surprise Lightning Storm isn't it? Huh, I wonder why the like 70-80 euro card isn't in the top 3 most cited cards. Yeah, I mean, this format is a format where a lot of people are not playing optimal decks because we do have to recognize that the cards needed for this format are like incredibly expensive compared to where we've been. Like even if you look at something like Imperm, like when Imperm was expensive, you know, it went from like 40s to 50s. I think it might have gone up to 70s at some point, but there was plenty of time where you could pick up Imperms cheap, whereas Lightning Storm just comes out and it's just like, hey guys, you know, so that's kind of shocking, you might say. Ace of Spuds says, hope somebody mails you back your Pendulum deck. Yes. Yeah, so I lent a Pendulum deck out back before Pendulum got hit, but it's fine. Pendulum is actually something I want to play out with a little bit. It's kind of a cute deck, I think, but we will need to see where the wind takes us, basically. I mean, there was crazy thing was like looking at the card market series, and then you just see a Pendulum Mucho coming down, and I was just like, why is he playing Pendulum Mucho in Spiral? And then I realized it's probably because it's search. Oh, I'm dying. If I collapse on the stream, I went to F's in chat. That's all. Nothing else. But yeah, Pendulum Mucho is searchable, so that is a reason to play the card. Another cool thing with this new PC is I should be able to do this without destroying everything, because I think the old computer would have died. Yeah, so I mean, we don't have the deck list yet from Paris, but I am very excited to see what the Invoked Shaddoll list looks like. I think the hero list, there wasn't anything super crazy in it. He was playing Avarice, and that's probably the deck in the format that can play Avarice. So, that's something to kind of look at. But, yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting. I still need to figure out what I'm playing. We might do that at locals tomorrow, or we might stay and start map design. I don't know if people have seen, but between myself and Tom, we got jackets made for the team, and we don't have any of them in Ireland yet, but I'm super excited because they look really nice. So the next step is to design playmats. So now that I have told all of you about this, we can expect the playmats within the next year or so is the general time frame. No, but fingers crossed. I'll say it to you here so that I'm accountable. We will try and have snazzy Kuribrohs mats for Euros. That's what we'll aim for. Wolfric, if you're asking about Card Market Series Paris, it was won by Invoked Shadol. Second place is Salomon Great, and then third and fourth place were Spiral. I know one of them was a Spiral Pendulum variant, and then I don't know about the other one. Very cool decks. Once the deck lists are up, we'll share them about because it's pretty interesting. Ace of Spuds, key. You should just play anyway. If you want to come Galway, we'll find a way. Hello, Y&L Productions. I hope you're doing well. Desires was there. Do I think Block BA is the way to go with BA in this format? I think honestly, I think there's a lot of options for where you want to go with BA. Both the Block BA list and the list that Tom's been playing, the more kind of can't say it's a more combo-y BA because I feel like they end on similar stuff. Basically, I will try and get Tom to do an actual deck profile of the current list if he's not holding it for Utrecht, because I think it does some interesting things that the block list doesn't do. But I think both of them are very interesting, and I think it's a case of, if you have the cards for one of them, it's good, but it's really cool that there are multiple BA lists for the format. I think the pure BA decks have started dying down, which is nice, because I think at the start of the format, people were trying to resolve Beatrice and stuff for no reason. So, that's kind of calmed down a little bit. Beatrice is a really good card, but this is probably not the format for Beatrice. Floating into Purple Dante doesn't really do much at the moment. Also, if anybody from Butler's Hot Chocolate is watching this, if you want to sponsor the team, just let us know, because it's good hot chocolate. Kian says that the team just isn't good without Kian. Yeah, no, it's Kuribrohs has just been all downhill since Kian left. We only won a YCS and topped a few others and stuff. It's tough times without him. We have to deal with James as a resident Corkonian. It's scary times. Do I think of building a Jaden deck to play against beginners? I think that's really cool. I'm super behind building fun decks for playing. And really just casual Yu-Gi-Oh! In general is really interesting. I think often competitive players get a little lost in the kind of min-maxing side of the game and lose out on the chance to really just enjoy doing some really crazy fun stuff. Is a Jaden deck the best character deck to build? I think the Yugi's Legendary decks are really interesting. I know Legendary Decks 2 is getting a reprint soon, and that's probably one that's a nice place to build from. But yeah, I think building anime decks to play against new players is a lot of fun, and it's pretty cool. It's a good way to kind of introduce people to slightly more consistent deck building with stuff they're familiar with. Yeah, Postmaster Rule is going to be very interesting. Where it's going to take us, nobody knows. But, we're going to be going on an adventure together. Um, could you compare the Card Market Series to the PPG events in terms of competitive players and decks? I think PPG is more established at the moment. I think Card Market has higher potential. And I think this for two reasons. So, first off, Card Market has much more of a monopoly in its market. So, PPG is technically competing with other platforms in the US. You have things like TCG Player. I'm sure there's a few others that I can't think of off the top of my head, but there are other competitors in that space. ARG, back when ARG was involved with things that aren't Argent Saga. Whereas in Europe, Card Market, I guess there's things like maybe Alibaba and maybe Eman that are also competing, but so many of those are using Card Market as a platform anyway. So it has massive reach amongst the player base, especially with so many teams sponsored. So, and then also Europe is much easier to travel around. So as the Card Market Series grows, I think it will attract more competitive players. And so you'll see a higher percentage of the spiky players at the Card Market Series events than you would see at the comparable PPG events. But that's just my kind of theory on it. It might not be the case, but I think there's a high possibility of Card Market Series within a year or two of becoming kind of considered as valuable as a YCS. Because at the moment, I think it's kind of, winning a Card Market Series is like winning a large regional in Europe. It's somewhere around that prestige. It's a pity that they don't have the ability to give regional qualifications, because that would really drive numbers up. But something cash prizes and all that. If I could choose 3 decks to go to a regional and top, what decks would I take? Spiral. I think, Spiral, despite all of I've been complaining about the consistency of the deck, the deck is still great. But yeah, it's kind of like, if you have access to the Spiral stuff, I'd possibly be on the Extravagance build, but I've not tiered it enough yet. Alternatively, if you're looking to top, something like Trains or something like Mech Knight seems pretty safe. Particularly, I think Trains is really interesting because people just don't know what the deck does, so you get free wins. So I guess spot 1 is like our meta combo deck. Spot 2 is our go second kill you deck that people don't know. I guess Invoked, Trains, and Dinos are the decks of that variety in the format, but I think Trains is the one people are less familiar with. So I think if I was going to play one of those decks, Trains would probably be the one to play. And then in terms of deck that I would like to play, just kind of in terms of it makes me happy playing the deck, depending on what the Invoked Shaddoll list looks like, might take a look at that. Alternatively, something like Guru, if I'm not feeling too excited, if I just want to sleep. Yeah, a lot of stuff can wreck boards for heroes. That's why it's very good at doing the whole go second kill you stuff, because it is really good against that. Broad Bull is saying bring Luna's, Salad, and Spiral. Yeah, again, it's kind of, I think this is a format where there is a certain barrier to entry in terms of what decks you have access to, but I think you can take pretty much anything in top events. You said use armies, sweater babies. Darklaw, I feel like you're not taking this thought exercise seriously here, because clearly Ysenju and Harpies are not on the kind of decimating level that Weather Painters are. So, find stuff that actually matches Weather Painters' power level, and then we can talk. Are there are there decent budget decks worth recommending to a friend? In terms of... if Salamangreat is reachable, Salamangreat is probably a good place to be. I think we're actually in a really poor place in terms of budget decks at the moment. And again, I could be wrong on this, but I think there's a lot of, a lot of the classic examples. Salamangreat is more difficult to get now. Dinos has also become expensive recently. So, I don't know. Looking at the chart that we have here, Lunalight is probably the budget deck of the format. If Lunalight falls into your budget, it's probably a really good pickup. I think the deck is going to do a lot going forward. It gets to do a lot of fun stuff. You get to summon Time Thieves and stuff. And there's probably the most space for making up for cards that you can't afford with replacements. Other option is Salamangreat, and then maybe Orcust. I don't know how expensive Orcust is at the moment, but I feel like it's probably dropped, although the scrap stuff is probably expensive. So yeah, Luna and Salamangreat are probably the good ones. You get to play rank 4s and stuff that should be relatively cheap. So those would be the ones that I'd be looking at. Fatboyfit asks, how many tops do I have? I have like 2 or 3 regional wins and no YCS tops because I made the mistake of judging all of them. So we're still working on the tops. We have a couple of day 2s, but yeah, we need to work on winning more large events rather than staffing them. Kama 1, Kama 2, Kama 3, powerful for the devs. I think you've got this. Plasming a guy's moral sword is pretty nice. Plasming anything is very satisfying. Plasma is a fun card. Dinos and Salad are under 200. Yeah, I mean, there you go. Dinos, Salad are both options. I assume Luna is cheapish. 5th place at Brotherhood Regional was Mech Invoked. Yep, I mean, again, the deck does stuff. It's just a case of, like, does the deck do stuff just because it has powerful cards, or does the deck do stuff because people play the deck well? And that's kind of something to consider when choosing your decks. Fatboy Fit, hi to Christian Lee. Thanks for watching our shows. I hope you enjoyed them. Solid should be budget again after Signet Mining. Yeah, if Signet Mining gets reprinted, I don't know if there's a reprint due. If there is, somebody correct me in the comments. But yeah, once Signet Mining becomes available, Salamangreat becomes very accessible. Salamangreat also struggles where it would like impermanence to be cheaper as well. That would be nice. Where is the Appointer of the Red Lotus? Appointer of the Red Lotus is such a weird card because I have seen that card have multiple rulings, and those rulings have flip-flopped multiple times, so it's kind of weird. The real question is, where's Mind Crush? Oh, I miss Mind Crush. I was like looking through cards recently, and I came across my Mind Crushes, and I was like, oh, this card's so good. When my opponent searches like Resort, I can pull the Resort out of their hand, and then I was like, nah, that card's bad. It's very sad. Imagine resolving Mind Crush on your opponent and pulling all of the Fiendesses out of their hands. Or the opponent goes, activate Hidden City, search Guru, and you're like, Mind Crush, Guru, and you're like, okay, I guess I lose. How is no material? No material is probably underrated. Probably good right now. It hypothetically is good against Spiral. Here's what I will say against about no material. Let's just check the trend. So, first ed printings of the card are like €8 at the moment on Card Market. There's one guy who has 12 second edition prints. Yeah, Alibaba have 12 copies of the card at $7.35. Now, they are German, but, like, at that price, for a secret rare, I don't see why you wouldn't pick up the card, because there will be formats where the card is fantastic. Dual overload printing for mining and phantasmic. That's crazy. Those cards have to be chase, I assume. But yeah, reprinting both of those cards is fantastic. That means two of the more expensive cards that are really great in Salmon Great are getting reprinted. So, that would be awesome. Yeah, I mean, the nice thing with Heroes is while Heroes has expensive cards, most of them are one-ofs, so it is more accessible than something like Spiral. And if the deck gets hit, the things shouldn't depreciate as much. Whereas, if Magician's Souls drops in value, all three of your souls are dropping in value. Whereas, if Heroes gets a hit, it might just affect, like, a Dusted Gold, or it might just affect Malicious Bane. So it's kind of safer in that regard. Hakai. I have not actually seen the Hakai cards yet. I will have to check it for you now. Oh, Unchained. Yeah, Unchained is really interesting. I think we need a little bit more support for it. But it's interesting. Broadbull points out that it's probably just bad salad. Yeah, but it pops cards. It has such a good Link 4. What could go wrong? Prank Kids Fatboy Fit is definitely one of the decks that has been caught up in the crossfires. Is the deck able to top events? Probably. I think Prank Kids is a deck where, first off, it has inbuilt life gain and burn, which is really relevant in the game at the moment, in the kind of competitive game, because it makes you better at tournaments, because you have a win condition game 3. And then also Prank Kids has the advantage that, again, majority of players just don't know what the cards do. Would I necessarily take Prank Kids to events? No, but I also don't have much playtime with Prank Kids. I think if you know the deck well and you are comfortable with the deck, it is probably, I think you could top a regional with it, probably, if you know it really well. Depends on the size of the regional. But it's not a deck that I'd be super... I wouldn't have much faith in the deck. It'll probably start doing stuff again at some point. So Farfadet Paradox. This is the deck breakdown from the main event in Paris this weekend at the Card Market Series. So there were 300 players. Is Spiral underrepresented? Spiral is underrepresented. Yes, because there are going to be more casual players at this event, presumably. The French market, I don't know how competitive it's becoming over time. So, like, I would assume that 70 to 80% of these players are probably French. I think there were a lot of Germans at the event as well. So the German market, I would assume, has a slightly higher amount of highly competitive players, and my understanding of the French market is that it has a slightly lower percent, because there's that kind of strong French connection between the anime, the kind of BD culture in France, and just the culture of how French culture interacts with Japanese culture, means that there are a lot more casual players in that market. You can see that with like Le Stream, where they do, the duels that they do aren't necessarily meta duels. They have a lot of speed duel and stuff, which is really cool to see. But I do assume that a lot of this other is French players playing things like Harpies and decks that they enjoy that aren't necessarily going to win the event. So yeah, I would expect more Spiral at a large event, but not much more. Again, as we've discussed earlier in this stream, Spiral does have a a pay gate to it. And a lot of players aren't going to spend that money when they could play something like Altergeist, which is a lot more accessible and not as expensive. Although Altergeist is kind of expensive because you want to play Extravagance. So, yeah. Okay. If you have a Gemini monster on the field under TCBO, can you normal summon it again? As far as I'm aware, you can. Let's look up. I would assume so because the number of monsters on the field isn't going to change by the action. But there's also the fact that you can't tribute summon. But with a tribute summon, you have state 1 where you have a monster and state 2 where you're attempting to summon a monster. It's going to be a because Konami says so. In times like this, we go to the card database and we look it up in Japanese and we see what that tells us. Is it smart to stock up on good rocks like Nibiru and Fossil Dyna? Yeah, I mean, the rock support is interesting. I think the rock, rock is... In the same way that light, dark are kind of the most printed card types, and they get the best cards, I think rock is one of those types that gets a lot of good support. So I think I'm not crazy about Nibiru, I'm not crazy about Fossil Dyna, but if you see them and they're cheap, they're probably worth picking up. Broad Bull points out that you can play the Link for Unchained Monster in better decks, and that is a completely valid point. Do I think iMovie is good for editing for somebody starting off a YouTube channel? It completely depends what you need to do. I mean, the majority of content on this channel has absolutely zero editing on it. We are very firm believers in one take is the best number of takes. So, you know, that's why we like doing live content, because it's engaging for you guys, and it also means that we don't have to edit our secrets out. But yeah, so, you know, it's... the largest challenge with editing is generally the amount of time it takes. So, you know, just find a software that you're comfortable with, that you understand how to use, and if you want to edit, plot out your stuff, do storyboards, know what you're editing, and get used to editing with timings, because that's really important. I'm not a very professional editor by any means, but yeah, there's a lot of subtlety to it, but the software shouldn't matter too much. As long as you have something that works, you can make it work. I know people say this is currently being done through OBS. I'm aware of people who do editing through OBS where they'll make something run live and they'll record that the live playback of a video and put stuff over it. And I've even used OBS for editing where I'll just have stuff that I show, but it's getting into completely unrelated technicals talk. But yeah, there's a lot of ways to edit without needing anything fancy. Searching Nibiru with Gallant is less than ideal. Yeah, I mean, I would like to search cards that actually progress my game a little bit with Gallant. Fossil Dyna is probably the better search there, because it's like, well, if I can search Fossil Dyna and summon it, it's probably better than Nibiru, right? Let's just stop them. French Connection UK. Are we saying this because French players are coming to the UK, or because Tom was over in France playing, or have I been secretly outed as the French connection to the UK? Find out next time. If heroes go tier 1, pick up Contrast Hero Chaos, Super Poly Dare Dark Claw with yours. I mean, that's amazing. And Contrast Hero Chaos is fun, but then you still just lose to Dare Super Poly. Starving Venom is possibly possibly a better generic target. Depends on extra deck space. I think Heroes generally struggles with extra deck space because you'd like to play infinite of everything and you just can't fit that. Hair, I unfortunately don't have any gameplay today because it is just myself here. The guys will be back with gameplay later in the week. There's a chance we'll do a TKB live tomorrow from locals in Ireland, and if not, it's very likely we'll have a TKB live with gameplay on Thursday from Tom. It just depends on both of our availabilities and whether locals is firing and stuff. But yeah, so today no gameplay, I'm afraid. Just chats with friends. But yeah, so this is the general stuff from Paris. I wonder if the PPG event has a format breakdown. Let's find out. Oh no, PPG was the weekend prior anyway, so that's old news. Nobody needs that. What we do have is, for our last little thing to look at before we call it a night, we have the deck list from the Pasadena Regional. So this is the 45 or 46 card hero deck. So we have 2 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, the greatest elemental hero ever printed. And we have Celestial, Dark Angel, Decider, Dynatag, Triple Malicious, the 1 Plasma to search to skill drain opponents. Then we have Honest Neos, Liquid Soldier, Double Shadow Mist, Double Solid Soldier, Triple Stratos, Adusted Gold, Faris, Increased Vion. I mean, that's all pretty standard. I guess the Ash Blossom isn't necessarily standard, but yeah, I don't know how I feel about playing 2 Ash Blossom, 2 Infinite Impermanence in a 45 card deck, because that's like 2 in 4 games you're going to see 1 piece of interaction for your opponent. I don't know if I agree with that. That seems kind of weird. That's not sufficient. It's not sufficient. A hero lives, Dark Calling, those are expected, E-Emergency Call. Only 2 E-Emergency Call, no Rota. I guess it's playing around Troll and Lockbridge. That's a card. Then we have Fusion Destiny. We have all the expected stuff. I guess Pot of Avarice is spicy. Maybe Dark Ruler No More, Pankratops, Escardo, Evenly Matched, Ghost Ogre, Nibiru, Super Poly. Yeah, there's nothing kind of like shocking in this. He has Acid. He plays Absolute Zero. Is that shocking? I don't think so. Yeah, so I don't know. Let's see if I can get a dueling book open, and if so, we will play 1 game of Squirrel, which might become more than 1 game of Squirrel. Yeah, Hero is really fragile, in the same way that whatchamacallit. Ugh, Flash is blocked. Imagine if Flash ever actually just worked. Also. Oh. Whoops. Yeah, so just give me 1 second. Drololo's family team. Yes, France has a lot of casual players. France also has some fantastic players. Not trying to slight those at all. Like, France is a really strong region, and is very real in the current format. So, you know, I think France is kind of surpassing a lot of the kind of classic strong regions. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes from there. Let's see if we can get this Chrome window to show on the stream. And if so, no. Dueling book. Yeah, so unfortunately Chrome is not behaving. I know what the issue is. I forget how to fix it on the fly. So let's check what we can do. It's like something weird with how the browser displays itself. Okay, just have to go into Chrome and disable hardware acceleration. Is that visible now? Okay, we have to relaunch. Okay. Fingers crossed. Do we have... Yeah, we did it. Well done, everybody. We survived the technical apocalypse. Okay, and now we will actually take stuff down so you can actually see the thing. Okay, and now I am ridiculously oversized. Okay, cool. Okay, so we will set up a game of goats. Not goats, squirrel. Do I have squirrel built on this? Squirrel. Host. Unlimited, unrated, dual note. Squirrel. Dual password is moo lowercase. If anybody wants to join. That game has been set up now. But yeah, so like I said, live matches aren't possible because it's just me. So we can do live squirrel matches. But yeah, France as a region is showing a lot of potential right now. Like, I only expect French Yu-Gi-Oh to grow, and it's probably the best market for the game at the moment. So, okay, we've got a game on our hands. Very snazzy sleeves. Okay, let's play some Yu-Gi-Ohs. So we won the die roll, so we are going to go second, because drawing an extra card in this format is very valuable. For anybody who hasn't seen Squirrel before, Squirrel is the fun format that Tom and the Bristol boys like to bring to events. So if you ever see Tom at a YCS, or a card market series, or a regional, just throw down the gauntlet, challenge him to a game. He'll be more than happy to play. That is a powerful set one go. I think we are going to just go to main phase. Normal summon. Okay. Yeah, this is the kind of format where we are going to normal stuff and punch with stuff. Then our opponent will normal stuff and punch with stuff. So this back row, it will either be a piece of interaction, or it could just be something to So, you know, it could be spell and trap removal, or else it could be something like Mirror Force or Dimension Barrier. Didn't play around Mech Knights. Team's gonna kill me, guys. But yeah, so for people who aren't familiar with the Squirrel format, it's a Highlander deck, which means every card is unique in the deck. And then additionally, so it's 40 cards, all are unique. Takes a lot of cards from Goats and adds in a few extra fun cards to kind of make it more interesting. So yeah, I mean, this hand that we have here, there's perhaps not much else we could have done with that turn, but you'll see a lot of turns where it's just a case of normal summon a beater, interact with the opponent's beater, and even if you have more plays, you don't want to commit all of your resources immediately, because there are a lot of blowout cards, such as like Dark Hole or Mirror Force, that require you to kind of play a slightly slower game. And that's the issue with cards like Evenly Matched. That's kind of sad. Yeah, Warrior Lady's gonna banish my witch. My witch. But yeah, that's kind of the issue with cards like Evenly Matched, is ideally you want cards like that to make players less likely to overextend. But instead, Evenly Matched means that people just play more polarized decks rather than less polarized decks. Cool. Or are you saying, yes, I can activate Witch? Yeah, Squirrel is a cool deck. We have the deck list somewhere, if anybody wants to check it. Okay, that's okay. What squirrel? Which squirrel? Where squirrel? Okay, I assume that is indicating that Warrior Lady is banishing. Generally, you're gonna banish the... you're gonna banish the Warrior Lady rather than give your opponent the search. It is what we would call a good play. But yeah, we're gonna finish up with this game. If people have questions, just let me know. Good game, Mr. Rogers asked, what did you think of the event overall? If you're talking about Card Market Series Paris, looked like it was really good fun. I unfortunately couldn't make it over just due to some other commitments. Ooh, now I'm lagging. But I'm definitely wanting to get over for a Card Market Series at some point in the near future. We're going to go for a powerful set of defense past turn. Really showing off our power. But yeah, I need to figure out if I'm going to Utrecht, because that's coming up very soon. We kind of blew a lot of our Utrecht budget on this computer. But again, it's kind of a case of... Oh. Okay, cool. We're not frozen. It's kind of a case of... I forget what I was saying. But yeah, we actually have a cool content plan, myself and Tom, which once he's around and I'm around, we're going to be working on. So we should be getting some kind of interesting match content out over the next while. Because we like playing Yu-Gi-Ohs. And people seem to like watching Yu-Gi-Ohs. Like, for anybody who's on Facebook and isn't following Yu-Gi-Oh! Results and Infos France, it's hilarious. They just posted a post. Last Sunday was the huge WCQ of Planif. Yeah, that is okay. Yeah, huge WCQ in Brittany, which brought together 25 players. First place was Spiral. Bet nobody saw that coming. Room. Okay, it's our turn. Huh. We're not drawing many of the good cards. I guess we go in phase 1, normal summon, battle phase, attack, effect. Yeah, so we're gonna do the bouncy bounce, if that's okay. If he divine rats me, I'll be very sad. Do I anticipate Spy being optimized for Utrecht and Vegas and dominating the event, or do you think it'll fall off as people learn how to exploit its weaknesses? Unless there's like super secret tech that people are planning that I've not seen, I don't think Spy is going to be the best deck for the event. Oh, okay. I think we might have had connection issues there. Because I don't think normal summon Grand Mole is the game ending play. But we can see what we were gonna draw. Yeah, we were gonna be playing a long game there. Oh, we could have just special summoned Cyber Dragon. That was a much better play than normal summoning Grand Mole. We could have gone special Sidra, normal Grand Mole, and then bounce, punch. But summoning the Sidra is kind of spooky because the extra decks do have the Chimera attack. So if you summon it kind of without any backup, then you can get into trouble. How did Tom go at the event? Tom did okay. He finished 4-3, I think. Which, if he had gone 5-2, I think he could have possibly topped. But I think it was a good preparation event for the upcoming YCS. So he definitely enjoyed it, if nothing else. Yeah, so Spiral being optimized for Utrecht Vegas. I'm not convinced. I mean, we can... One of the best things to do is literally just watch matches, see what people are playing. Oh, gross. Infernoid. Yeah, this is Infernoid versus, like, Geist or Guru, I guess. What's he reading? I guess he just got something negated by a Deity effect. Lightning Storm. Woo. But yeah, and mana, no worries about that. It's a pity that the internet was playing up. My dueling book was also being slow, so I think it might just be dueling book in general. Yeah, and Tom was playing BA Anthony, so that's what he was on for this event. Magical Mallet. What rating does this guy have? Huh. That's kind of bizarre. I don't think that's a very good card. I assume this has to be some sort of mind deck. We'll see if he does anything interesting. There's 33 people watching this, which is kind of silly. Let's just hop out and we'll see if they've done anything interesting by the time we get back. Geist versus Machina. Ooh, this is cool. Geist versus Cyber Dragon is interesting. I mean, is it interesting though? Question mark. Like, the issue is, how do those actually match up into each other? Leo Senpai. Is Leo Senpai LDR? That'd be pretty hype if it was. Also, is this a Mech Knight mirror match? It could be. Although, I don't think Mech Knight plays Scapegoat in this day and age. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just out of touch with the times. I don't know. I don't know anything, really. It's kind of weird how, like, you know, what do you do with Scapegoat in this day and age? Make a Saryuja? Dinomiscus. That's bullying. Dinomiscus is a good card. But yeah, this is kind of bizarre if it's a Mech Knight mirror. Oh wait, no, it must not be a Mech Knight mirror. This must just be some sort of control deck. But they're taking so long, so we'll come back to them and check in on them later. This is Dinos. Is Mech Knight an actual deck, or is this just invoked? Is that a Gradle? Switch a Gradle. Yep, oops. That's boring. Is this one Gradle? I don't think this one is Gradle. Gradles are pretty good. I assume you're talking about Ipiara, which is not a Gradle. Yeah, Mech Knight solo can't be a thing. It maybe can be a thing going into the next format. Okay, that's kind of silly. Summon Chakanine Go. Powerful. Although now, this guy has really good plays, so he's fine. Shuffle Reborn's pretty good play. What are people playing on ladder today? Oh, it's not LDR. It's just somebody trying to show off. He had a Mech Knight on board. I was like, there's a chance that it could be. Mech FTK. Playing on DB is a lot of hassle. Okay, he's made a security dragon. He has taken like forever to actually do anything. Oh, we have a Nightmare Phoenix. Okay, so we have turned Scapegoat into Security Dragon plus Nightmare Phoenix, turning into... Drumroll. I mean, Avermax is decent, I guess. So, the funny thing with Mech Knights is, my understanding is, with the new Mech Knight Orchest card, you can, like, resolve the Mech Knight field spell, which is hilarious. Let's bring up Mech Knight field. Yeah, World Legacy Scars. All Mech Knights gain 300 attack defense. Once per turn, you can discard a Mech Knight or World Legacy draw card. You can banish 8 Mech Knight monsters with different names from your graveyard or face up from your field. Send your opponent's entire hand and extra deck to the graveyard. Hilarious. Yeah, this deck could be Paleo. It's kind of bizarre. Like, Scapegoat literally doesn't give us any information. He didn't discard the Nightmare Phoenix. We've seen a Lancia, which suggests that this is maybe game 2. Lancia isn't good against Paleo, is it? Lancia, your opponent, they're like, I'll bring back my Paleos, and they just go back to the graveyard when you kill them? Huh. Oh, Lancia is probably main decked. You can resolve the field spell with a 2.5 card combo. Classic. That's basically kind of the Link format as a whole is just, can I do it with a 2.5 card combo? You probably can. Can many Mechie boys beat an Avermax? We'll find out. But yeah, it's like there's an amount of information that you can gain from watching DB games, but they also just take so long. Yeah, I mean, good game, Mr. Rogers. You are correct. You can super outplay your opponents evenly matched with your main deck Lancia. It's true. But I don't think Mech Knights is main decking Lancia to stop the opponent evenly matching them. Something about going second, I think. So we are actually seeing a Mech Knight of the Morning Star being resolved. Question mark. What World Legacy card is he adding? Sorry, this is blue effect. Okay, that makes more sense. I was just like, what? I have no idea what's going on anymore. But yeah, we will be back later this week with more Yu-Gi-Oh! Like I said, we should have locals stuff coming soon. Either tomorrow from Dublin locals, or perhaps Thursday from Bristol locals. And then TKB Live number 40 will be back to normal with Tom and presumably Seb and Alec next week. If there's anything you want us to do between now and then, just let us know. We always do look at kind of any comments and feedback people have as to what they'd like to see. If you're playing any locals between now and next Monday, good luck. If you're playing any regionals between now and then, good luck. And we're just gonna watch this game, see what the hell is happening here, because we've just seen Mech Knight of Morning Star turn into another Mech Knight of Morning Star. And then discard. Gets World Legacy Key. What does the key do? I forget. Aha. Convenient. Yep. This is tiny. That's not World Legacy Key. Okay, negate trap cards. And yet he puts it here. Interesting. I have no idea what's going on anymore, guys. Will I be at Bristol next Sunday? Huh. I did not even realize Bristol was next Sunday. Phil, I will need to think about that. I believe that I believe that I am in Galway on Saturday, so it might be a little difficult to get to Bristol for Sunday, but I will definitely consider it. Oh no, Dingirsu, he was so young. Okay, that's kind of cool that the key... Oh, if the key was placed here... No, never mind. Okay, yeah, so the key doesn't care where it's placed. But if the indigo was placed here... That's kind of cute. It's a pity that the judgment was in a separate column, because otherwise the ding could have added it. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We're in trouble now, boys. I still don't know what his Evermax deck is. Oh, that still doesn't tell us what the Evermax deck is. People want to vote now as to what the Evermax deck is. Because at the moment, every single card it has played has been generic. Come on, just summon something so we know what's going on here. We'll never know. He's literally just going to kill the guy with Evermax, and we will just have to all accept that we'll never know what Leo Senpai is playing. Nice. I'm sure the Bristol guys will be at the Bristol Regional, if not myself. Let's quickly check Ryanair flights. Nope, Bristol flights real expensive now, so probably not going to Bristol for me. I'll see if I change my mind. Could be Banshee. Like, it seems like it has to be some sort of banished deck, right? Hum. This is just such a bizarre matchup. Oh, it's World Legacy Secret. Does that stop Evermax? Yeah, it does. So he gets to shut down trap cards, he gets to shut down Evermax. We still don't know what the opponent is playing. Does World Legacy have a spell card preventer? It's kind of weird because I feel like we were just talking about Mono Net Mech Knight earlier in this stream, and then we just find a match where it's Mono Mech Knight. This is not how that works because he'll have priority. It does seem like it's just Paleo deck. Do you think that draw phase should be a phase where you can activate cards? I think there is a very reasonable argument to just say that draw phase should end immediately. Magnite's beaten up by Evermax is pretty ironic. Phil skipping out on Monday work. You madman. How far of a drive is it for you guys? Uh-oh, paleo, as the kids used to say. Yeah, it must just be paleo frog. Would make sense. So bizarre. What a weird world. Yep, well, thought we were gonna finish up, but apparently we're just gonna watch Paleo versus Mech Knight. What? That's amazing. That is magical. That's crazy. I didn't know Mech Knight cards had actual card text on them. You chain to watch. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on here. 130 miles. That's quite a drive. Have you guys pre-booked for the regional? It's one of Martin's regionals, isn't it? Because if so, Martin's regionals are great. Big fan. I think a few friends are staffing and judging. If I recall correctly. I just completely forgot that regionals were a thing. So, yep, that's a me problem. Okay, so as this game looks like it is going to just dissolve into back and forth, we are going to call it an evening. Thank you all very much for joining me. Sorry that it wasn't as exciting of a TKB live as normal, but the boys should be back next Monday, and we will try to have some Yu-Gi-Oh stuff for you before next Monday, because we have one video a week when we can bring you more than that. But yeah, so we will be back soon. Thank you all very much for joining me. I hope you all have a lovely evening, afternoon, or morning, wherever you are. And we will be back soon with some more Yu-Gi-Oh. Catch you guys later. Then we actually